We're going to be starting a 4-part series on the Holy Spirit. In tonight's study, we're going to be looking at the character of the Holy Spirit. In session 2, next week, we'll be looking at the work of the Holy Spirit. Session 3, we'll look at the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And session 4, the fruit of the Holy Spirit. And so many of you may have gone through various teachings on aspects of the Spirit, and we're going to hopefully be zeroed in on these 4 categories tonight, looking at the character of the Holy Spirit. First, we need to discuss just our perception of God. Some people, when they begin to discuss the biblical revelation of the Holy Spirit, there can be some confusion if you don't have a right understanding, especially concerning the person of God. If you have an individual who believes in many gods, polytheism it's referred to, that really is a religion that comes out of ancient paganism. Egyptian, Babylonian, Greek, and Roman mythology is where we see that still hanging around today. But there are those, like the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, that believe that there is a duplicity or a multiplicity of gods that exist. And we want to make sure that you understand that as we speak of the Holy Spirit as God, we are not speaking of polytheism. We're speaking of monotheism, the idea of one God, and we'll establish that first. As the first verse in the Hebrew Shema, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 tells us, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." One of many verses which speaks of the fact that the Hebrew worship of God was based on the belief in one God. But within Christianity, there is this understanding of monotheism, which is referred to as Trinitarian monotheism. Now, that sounds like a contradiction until you get into it, and we're not going to fully develop the whole defense of the Trinity in this study. There are other studies and briefing packages that do that much better, but we do need to lay that down as a foundation. You see, the Bible refers to God as the Father, and in that sense, he is the unseen authority. Even when Jesus was in his earthly ministry, referring to the Father, he made reference to the fact that his actions were in submission to the will of the Father. And so the Father is the unseen authority. In fact, John 1:18 tells us, "No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten of the Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him." And so one of many verses that deals with the Father, he is the unseen authority. The Son of God is the revealed person of God. If there's a personage who is God revealed to man, it is the person Jesus Christ. And in fact, Paul's letter to Colossians 2:9 tells us, "For in him dwells all the fullness of the Godhead bodily." And so he's the physical representation of God. When either the prophet Isaiah or others have visions of the throne room of God and they see a person, that person is Jesus Christ. He is the revealed person of God. When John has his revelation, he sees on the throne of God a lamb, as it were, slain before the foundation of the world. He's making reference to Jesus Christ. God the Spirit is the presence of God in the world today. And to be quite honest, it's the most difficult person in the Godhead to understand, and therefore the most misunderstood and the most misrepresented. And hopefully, in a small way, as we go through our 4 sessions, we'll be able to remove some of that confusion concerning the Holy Spirit. Now, when we deal with this issue of God the Spirit, we recognize that this is not something that is an ignorance that perhaps just our generation are suffering with. During the time post the ministry and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the early church had trouble with this doctrine. In Acts chapter 19, we read in verse 1, "And it happened while Apollos was at Corinth that Paul, having passed through the upper regions, came to Ephesus. And finding some disciples, he said to them, 'Did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed?' And so they said to him, 'We have not so much as heard whether there is a Holy Spirit.'" Now, if you're familiar with that passage in 19, you'll recognize that the Apostle Paul was speaking to some former disciples of John the Baptist.